spin the keys, the fingertips that reach out to touch them, the string that begs to be bent? Or is it in the notes on a page, a foot to a pedal, the infinite space between imagination and skill? Or is it simply music?
Well, everybody, welcome, and thank you for tuning in. This is Jeff Spike Wong. I'm the host of the 13th Note Art of Mastery podcast. And what we talk about this podcast here is about mastery, how to develop and refine certain skills, certain things in life. And today I have a very special guest. Of course, you can see her. She virtually needs no introduction because everybody's seen her with me on the Miracles Online podcast, as well as she's been on Podcasting World on YouTube with Kat's Home Chat for years. So please welcome my lovely wife, Kat.
Hi,
how you doing, Kat? There you go.
Great.
So the reason why I wanted you to come on do the Art of Mastery is that I've been a fan of yours probably from day one, before we even got married. And the reason why I say that is the level of your craftsmanship and your refinement and your thought process has always intrigued me. And I've always felt that there's deeper about who you are. And of course, once we got to know each other and got married and everything, I just couldn't believe the richness of what you have in your life and how you dealt with those obstacles, fork in the roads, diversities. And I thought I'll talk about the mastery of the incredible, of the inner self, the outer self in this world. You have done an incredible feat. So with that, I would like to start with talking to you about your formative years, from your K through 12 years as a child. The kind of obstacles that you had to endure. And I'll let you kind of share with what you feel comfortable with. But just like one of the stories is that you're the oldest girl in the family sibling pecking order, right?
Oh, yes, of 5 children.
Okay, so you only have one older brother, Leo. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then you had 2 younger sisters and a younger brother.
Correct.
Okay. So one of the things that really always surprises me and blows my mind, because I was raised an only child, that the amount of responsibility that you were handed at a very young age. Can you share with us a little bit about the kind of things that you were required to do at a very young age at your home?
Sure. First off, Jeff, I want to thank you. I feel honored. I was really surprised when you asked me, because I guess it's like maybe many of us, we don't always see ourselves like everyone else does. We just take things for granted. And I've told Jeff that before, when he's been so complimentary and in awe of, what I just consider as part of navigating life, in this journey. And so I just want to thank you for asking me to be on the show. And my goal is, hopefully that there'll be a nugget or two, an inspiration, a nugget for someone to either relate to themselves, or remind them, really, because I believe in this journey, it's about really reminding ourselves, rediscovering really who we are, not what we were told. So I'll dive right in. Of course, K through 12 is formative years. That's a lot of years, and it actually was a breaking point going into junior high, as many people do. I started junior high back in Southern California in 7th grade, so that would be through 6th grade was my grade school. And So, where do I begin? As
Well,
I
let's talk about the responsibilities, like the things that you shared with me. It was kind of surprising. I don't know how many kids that currently or had this type of experience where you were expected to have dinner for the family at a young age. How old were you when
Yes.
you
So
started
we'll
that?
talk about that.
Okay,
Um, yeah, I would, and let's just back up a little because it might
sure.
make sense as we go forward. That I was a very, prior to going into sixth, seventh grade, because what the time frame you're talking about, Jeff, was right around seventh grade, and I've told you some of those stories. But prior to that, I was extremely shy,
Mhm.
very introverted. Introverted. If someone would come into the house, I would hide behind furniture. If I walked down the neighborhood sidewalk, we had sidewalks back then, not so much here in Texas. I would look at the ground as opposed to look at you. Extremely introverted until I had the opportunity to get into speech and drama, and then my personality changed completely. I was unleashed
Mhm.
with the whole drama world. So my parents were my mother decided to have a beauty franchise, which was about an hour and a half away from our home. And it was all encompassing, as you can imagine, starting a business yourself. And she stopped the commuting and started staying down there all week and just coming home on weekends.
Mhm.
My dad was an electrical engineer and he drove about an hour as well, but he did come home every night. So
Mhm.
at about 12ish, I was responsible for when he got home, might be 9 o'clock at night. My duty was to prepare his dinner and make sure he had dinner on the table. Now, for the kids, I was also responsible for feeding the kids. So, I look back and go, wow, that was pretty bizarre to be in seventh grade. And back then, we didn't have microwaves. We're talking the late 60s or the 60s, basically, this time period. So I would take out the pork chops the night before so they would defrost so that I would have something to cook them, the kids, my siblings, when I got home from school. And I can remember panicking in, like first or second period going, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I did not take the pork chops out to be defrosted.
Mm.
So I know that story,
Yeah, yeah.
Jeff.
Well, that's the part that really intrigued me due to the fact that a 12, 13-year-old is sitting in class going, holy crap, I need to make dinner and nothing's ready. And rest of us, I remember being that age thinking, that girl's cute, or I can't wait to Little League Baseball. So to have that kind of responsibility at that young age is incredible demand. But then I've also learned about, your family. You had mom and dad, white collar, nice neighborhood in Ventura, but there was a lot of pressure. And you go as deep as you comfortable you are, but there was a lot of underneath that was very ugly, right? So you had
Some
already
major
dealing with that.
dysfunctionality. Yeah,
Yeah.
major dysfunctionality. We grew up then, and I mean, I think about it. I think about my kids. My oldest daughter,
Mhm.
Tanya. I was a
Mhm.
single mom,
Right.
and she had responsibility that I'm sure her friends did not have in terms of helping with dinner to make dinner for the kids before I got home from my
Right.
corporate America job.
Mhm.
Or one story, we talked about this recently. I was in Yellow Page advertising, going to
Mhm.
date myself here. This
Mhm.
was the internet of the day. This is how you shopped. This is
Yeah.
how you found a barber, a restaurant, a whatever. And it was my first sales job, and I learned so much because I had to cold call
Mm.
and sell Yellow Pages. So it was extreme and valuable learning that it really has taken me to present day in
Sure.
running my own successful business to be able to overcome objections and not have fear of what someone's going to say, et cetera. But so in this one particular time, Jeff, and you've heard this story, I wasn't at the Yellow Page Company too long. I believe at that time it was Donnelly Yellow Pages. That was my second one. They actually had a book. My first one was United Publishers, and I was given a prototype that kind of looked like a thin page, and I had to walk into strip centers and say, "Hi, I'm here to sell you a bold listing. You don't know me, but you need to be in this book. No, we haven't published it yet. But if you're not in it, you're gonna lose."
So how old were you when this was going on?
When I got, let's see, at United Publishers, I believe I was about 28, because that's after I'd injured my back, being in the hotel catering business, and from lifting a tray. And someone had told me, I told you this recently, a family friend said, you should, when I'm recovering in therapy and so forth, said, you should get into sales. I'm like, really? Oh yeah. And at the time, again, this is going to be something that most people have never heard of. This individual was a manager of a waterbed store. He did very well for himself. Of course, waterbeds are a thing of the past, but at that time, everybody had a waterbed. And he said, oh yeah, you need to get in sales. You would do phenomenal. And I remember thinking, okay, well, let me look into that. So I started making cold calls, and nobody would hire me because I had no experience. And I thought to myself, well,
catch-22.
What's that?
It's the catch-22.
Exactly.
We want to hire you, but you have no experience.
You need to get a job. And I remember this guy. I remember it like it was yesterday. He said, honey, I think he called me honey, because I said, gee, I'm just stuck in a conundrum. I don't know how to get my foot in the door. He says, let me tell you something, honey. He says, 1 out of 10 people will buy anything. So it's about persistence. It's about consistency. So I just kept making the phone calls. So back to the Yellow Page story. So I was pretty new at Donnelly Yellow Pages, and great opportunity. I ended up being, their star producer and mentors for many. And we had a meeting that was called, that was not scheduled, and I had to be at the meeting. And I had one child at daycare, and I think it was a Christian preschool, and the other one at kindergarten, not too far from there. Like, how am I going to get them home? So again, there was no digital money back then. And so I called up my daughter, Tanya. And again, this is, her story of responsibility, and said, there's a cookie jar, go in the cooking jar. There's some money in there. I want you to call a taxi, and I want you to get in the taxi, and here's the addresses, go pick up the kids.
And how old was Tanya at this time? Your oldest at this time?
Let's see. Gee.
About 12, 13?
I think about that. Yeah. I think about 12.
How old were you when you had your first child?
I was not quite 20. When I delivered Tanya, I was 19. 2 months later, I turned 20.
So if you're in your late 20s and this happened, she was barely even reaching.
Maybe she was 10.
Yeah. Okay. So it gives the audience a little bit better timeline to look at. And before you continue on this portion of, getting into sales, I want the audience to kind of understand the kind of building blocks you have, So let me ask you this. You've always shared with me that you broke out of your shell when you got into drama, right?
I did. My very first class in 7th grade, speech and drama.
Okay. So that timeline's around 13 years old, right?
Yeah, about 13.
When that happened. Then a couple of years later, you ran away from home. Am I right?
Yep.
Couple of years, and you went all on your own. You end up in Venice Beach, and kind of just share a few moments in regards to just the mindset of saying, I am out of here, and now you're in a strange world all by yourself as a teenager.
Jeff, I think it comes down to, of course, I look back, it's like, of course, looking at another person. Heck, 10 years ago looks like another person, because this is a journey, right?
Yes.
But I think it's the basic dynamics of the human condition. And we see that in sales also. Okay. We always say, Well, when someone gets in enough pain, they'll make a decision to do something different. Until then, they'll be complacent. And I experience all kinds of abuse at home for varying reasons because my parents were dysfunctional and abused. Obviously, it's a generational thing unless you choose to stop it. So the pivotal for me, I remember it, even though it was decades ago, was my mom was chasing me down the street with, it was either a coat hanger or a rubber hose. Yeah.
Wow.
So that was not unusual to get beaten by a coat hanger or a rubber hose or a belt. And I just said, that's enough.
Right.
That's enough.
Right.
Yeah.
And how long were you out on Venice Beach?
I was in Venice Beach for about 2 to 3 months. I turned 16 on the run.
Right. And you told me the story about sleeping next to dumpsters and things as such.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And it was cold, the beach.
Well, that particular time, that was a short runaway. I had left and I hadn't gotten a hold of my girlfriend yet. I later was able to sneak in through her door and sleep in her closet. But the night before, I had no place to stay. So I slept next to like it was in a residential dumpster.
Sure.
Yeah. Abandoned house.
It was the desperation that you just couldn't deal with the abuse and the reality.
I just couldn't deal with it.
So a huge survival mechanism, I would say.
Yep.
Came in, right? In regards to that.
You know, I want to refer back to Jeff.
Yeah.
Now, this obviously I'm an adult, but I really believe that everything that we are charged to go through in this journey, somehow we've selected it. We've selected our parents, dysfunctional or loving, et cetera, because it's something that our soul needs. Okay. Yeah. To learn, to teach, et cetera. And I look back at that, Tanya getting the taxi for the kids. And I think, that's very resourceful. And that's one, I think, interwoven thread that I see throughout my journey when I do reflect on it. I now see it in my kids. I was not the perfect parent because, again, it was a journey. So I made a lot of mistakes. Hopefully not as brutal as I know not as brutal as my parents, but it's my first time being a human being on this planet as well. But I see that resourcefulness in my kids, all three of them.
Interesting.
I see the resource, and they're all unique, perfect human beings in their own different ways. But I see that resourcefulness in Sarah, of course, in Adam, definitely in Tanya. That I'll find a way.
Right.
I'll find a way.
So now, a few years later, you got married, correct? You got married around 18?
Let me take you back to, because here I am out of school.
Okay.
Just so you have continuity on the story. So here I'm out of school for 3 months. No school. Right. And finally, after getting beat up by some what we call sidewalk commandos, which is basically a biker that doesn't have a bike, got my face kicked in. Wow. And I just thought I've had enough. I can't do this anymore. And I called home. And my parents came and got me after 3 months. And my dad was able to go to the school and negotiate with them that I could take some extra courses or this and that and still graduate. So it didn't put me back a year or anything like that. And I ended up graduating, on time, basically, which was.
So that was an incredible feat, actually, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because one of the stories you told me when you were going to school, like typical, all of us go to high school, we're having a great time. I got, to play sports and get friends and so forth. You had hardship. You weren't even giving lunch money. So you had to, fight and scratch and crawl to survive even your high school years, right?
Yeah, they didn't worry about the details so much. Yeah. So again, I became resourceful and, I'm not proud to say, but found out different ways to get money.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the key. There was several survival instincts that along the ways that I think kicked in and helped, because I believe at a teenage years, when those formative years, all of us are still learning processes, and where you were just dealt with real life, like hardcore stuff that you had to go, okay, it's survival or not. So,
Right.
do you remember that mindset? That there's like, did you ever have a why me moment or anything like that, or you just forged on in and just pretty much, say this is what it is, and I need to make it happen?
I'm going to coin, and I'm giving him credit, Greg Braden
Mm-hmm.
term. I've shared this with you,
Sure.
that I was very blessed to have a strong soul compass.
Yes.
And I say that not in a spiritual sense or a religiosity sense, but more really of a spiritual connection sense, because my inner wisdom brought me, to be to survive. First off,
right,
to come up with solutions. I'm sure somewhere in there was why me. Because I've shared with you, the dynamics were such that out of 5 kids, I was the one that was abused. And actually, even it was vocalized. You don't want to be like. I'm not going to even say the name because I don't like my nickname, Kathy. Someone asked me once, "Oh, do you ever go by Kathy? Does anybody ever call you Kathy?" My answer was, one time. I'm Kat or Kathleen. Anyway, I keep bouncing the camera.
Kit Kat.
Kit Kat. His dad called me Kit Kat, like the candy bar. Bless his heart.
My dad loved you greatly.
We see us in heaven.
Yeah.
We see him in heaven.
And so, okay.
So where was I going with that?
So we were coming out of the high school and in the Forge On and the soul compass.
Yeah. So when you asked me, did I ever, at those points, I thought, why me? I didn't understand the dynamics till later. And we don't have enough time to go into that through my journey and my healing, where I went, oh, aha. Sure. I see why I was the one, because, and that takes a lot of healing, discovery, educating yourself to go, okay, let me step back and look at this. Because up until that point, certainly a child is going to think, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. In fact, I'm horrible. My parents are using me as a bad example, saying that they'll get beaten if they act like me. And you don't want to be like your sister, do you? In plain earshot of yourself. So certainly, those are what I call lies. Those are the lies that someone else told us to get by with their dysfunctionality. And they're not knowing how to properly, lovingly, and caringly parent a child and make them feel safe. I mean, that's the job of parents, is to make our kids feel safe as much as we can.
Right.
And seen and valued. So yes, I did have some glaring moments, to your question, Jeff, of just thinking, why? What have I done to deserve this?
Sure.
And again, it was through many, probably well into my 30s, working through my 40s, and really it's a continual discovery of remembering who we really are. And I wore this, I think this is a good time to point out my hat, because I wore my VIP hat. See that?
Yes.
I very rarely wear it, because I don't want anybody to, we really shouldn't care what other people think, but think, oh, she thinks she's VIP. I wore it specifically to have the conversation of, we all need to be our own, very own personal, important person, our own VIP. Right? It's so important. It doesn't matter what anybody, family, friends, strangers, people on social media, it doesn't matter what they think, say, or do about you. To quote one of my favorite books I'm reading right now by Mel Robbins, let them.
Sure.
Be your very own VIP.
That's right.
And that starts with not believing the lies and really stepping back as you can. It's a journey.
That's right.
I am working on my journey every day.
Yeah.
It's a nonstop. I don't think we ever really stop trying to be the best version of ourselves.
Right.
At least I don't plan on it, because I
Right.
know it's a daily, if not a moment to moment awareness.
Right. So let's pick this up at you're at your late teens, and you met your first husband, and you got married, and then you became a
Yes.
mother.
Actually,
All
I
this in
met
a very
him when I
short time,
was
right?
I met him when I was on the run.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I might not have mentioned that to you. I met him when I was on the run. This,
Mhm.
this good-looking Italian,
Mhm.
machismo, young man, and he was kind of a bad boy,
Right.
and I've seen and read so many stories since then, and realized then that my my little brain then,
Mhm. Mhm.
as a late teen, was, oh, he's so handsome, he's so cute, and he's just had a rough life. All he needs is someone to love him.
Mm.
I can fix him.
Yeah. The
And I
nightingale.
remember consciously
Yeah.
thinking that I
Mhm.
could fix him. So I was thinking about this the other day,
Mhm.
Jeff, because I was trying to put together the lineage and my memory of so many decades and so
Mhm.
far
Mhm.
back. And I was trying to think of how we got together again. Somehow I must have kept his sister's information, because she was stable and owned a home in Marina Del Rey. That's
Mhm.
the only thing I can remember, that how I reconnected with him after I graduated.
Mm.
Because
Okay.
when I graduated, I was renting a room in someone's home,
Mhm.
because I turned 18 in February. I didn't graduate till June, so I moved out of my grandmother's house and was renting a room, and was like, okay, and something told me to contact him. So then we got together, and I got pregnant,
Yeah.
and we got married.
And that relationship didn't
Beautiful.
last too long, right? And there was, of course, a lot of tension, fighting.
No, I took him back and forth a couple times, because I was, again, that indoctrination. Well, when you get married, you must stay married. It
Mm.
doesn't matter what's going on.
Right.
And he was had a record and had done these small robberies or whatever, and was in and out of jail.
Mhm.
And when Tanya was, I guess about a year and a half, he got arrested for good.
Mhm.
And I had no way to support her.
Mhm.
I ended up walking down the street where we lived in Inglewood and getting a job at a factory,
Mhm.
and worked in a factory on an
And
assembly line.
this is the part that
On an assembly line.
yeah,
You want me
and
to tell you the story about the
no, let me hold
getting
on,
sick?
because the part, like I said, the perseverance, the mindset that you have, and the character that you have, is surprising to me, that you didn't take the easy way out, which is, most beautiful, good looking young women, if they are in the bind, they go to a strip club and end up being a dancer. You
Really?
didn't
I mean,
even
I don't know
consider it.
that to be true, but I guess it
Well,
could.
I guess I grew up with a
You lived in
different
a different
crowd.
part of California, Jeff.
Yeah, the thing that to me was that, because you were a single mom, and you didn't basically prostitute yourself to the world. Okay, you made a definitive decision. You walked to work, or you made ways to make a living, like being a waitress. Tell us, how did you even got into a waitress job at that point?
You waitress. Okay,
Yeah,
let me put the Rolodex back here. Um,
because you were a waitress, like at a Sambo's, which is like a diner, right?
Sambos. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
So for a short time, I lived with my parents. That was very volatile, as you
Mhm.
can imagine.
Right.
And I walked out the day that my mom was striking me while I was holding the baby,
Hmm.
and made a decision. That's it.
Hmm.
And I don't know how I got to where, but not too far from there. I had been making phone calls. I did get a job offer. Again, I was like, I've never been a waitress, but I'm a hard worker. I've, da 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 da. So I ended up getting the graveyard shift,
Right.
got a little apartment
Mhm.
close enough to where I could walk to work. And I'll share you this story I've shared with you, Jeff, before
Mhm.
about putting Tanya in a
Yeah, tell that
uh,
story.
in a booth. So I'm in my apartment. It's my day off. Again, I'd been working graveyard shift. I think at that time I had worked something like 6 or 7 days in a row, just
So you're
because
about 21 years old?
the restaurant needed me. I'm about 21. Yeah,
Yeah.
not quite
Okay.
21. And I get a knock on the door. You've got to come to work. We're short, staff. You've got to come to work. And I'm like, well, I don't have a babysitter. What am I going to do? I don't have a babysitter. Because at the time, I ended up getting a young lady, a teenager who lived downstairs. And when I worked graveyard, she would come upstairs and sleep there
Mhm.
while I worked my shift. And then I came home and then she would go home. Well, I had made friends with this waitress, Vi, who it was one of those when I first started, Vi and I were like this. Like, she didn't like me. I was a threat to her.
Mhm.
And I thought she was just a cantankerous old lady.
Mhm.
And we did not like each other. And as things turned, we ended up being the best of friends. She was like
Mm.
a mentor. She was like a mother to me. She was
Sure.
super sweet. And so I'm not sure if she wasn't the one at the door. It was the manager who had come to my door. So I called Vi, what am I going to do? He said, if I don't come to work, I can kiss my job goodbye.
Mm.
I need this job. My rent is $125 a month. Can you believe that for a
Yeah.
1-bedroom?
Right.
What am I going to do? She said, it's okay, honey. Here's what you're going to do. You got a dresser drawer? Yeah, I've got a little used dresser. I want you to take the dresser drawer, put it all with the blankets, bundle up Tanya, and put her on the back booth and work your shift, your graveyard shift, which I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Saved my job.
Right. Well, you did what was needed. Right.
Exactly. I
so
did
that's
what was
an-
needed. And
Yeah.
and I panicked. I wouldn't have ever thought of that.
Right.
She was obviously older and wiser and obviously solution driven as well. And bless her heart, wherever she is, to give me that support and that solution.
Sure.
Yeah.
One of many angels that showed up.
One of many angels. Yeah. They're out there.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how long were you working as a waitress in that capacity? That type of, can I take your order? What do you like to drink thing? Couple years?
Oh, no, longer than that. So
really?
Then I had moved. This was in Huntington Beach. Then I moved. Where did I move back to? Did I move back to Ventura?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, fast forward, I graduated into, I don't know what made me apply. I think someone probably told me, gee, you can make more money because you get commission in banquets. So
right.
My last gig in the serving capacity was at the Newport Marriott in banquet department. Now,
and this is right before you got to Yellow Pages, correct?
Well, there was a couple of years because I was disabled for a couple of years
Okay.
and then had back surgery. And
so you're like mid-20s when you were doing banquet?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep. Yeah, I want to say I was mid-20s.
Okay.
Yep.
And this was challenging because, as you would describe to me, it's a lot of heavy work.
So to give you an idea, this was my first experience, one of many, of being in a man-dominated position.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, back then, definitely we did not have the equality of what we're working towards and have today, more so. But somehow the maitre d' liked what I had to say and hired me. So banquets would consist of from 50 to 500 people. And those were rounds of 10, rounds of 5 to 50, right?
Yeah.
So the average banquet, you went back there, you had the big tray. If you've ever been to a banquet, celebration or what have you, wedding or anything, they have the big trays. And typically you have 10 plates stacked with 10 metal lids, and then your
Yes.
baked potato, your steak, etc. So they were so heavy that, and again, I was the token female, but I worked very hard so that the guys didn't think I was getting any preferential treatment. And you might ask, well, what do you mean preferential treatment? Well, we were on what you call breakage. So if you had a wedding or you had an event with some, famous person, which we had all the time, and there was X number of bottles of wine or champagne, that's all tallied up. And then a commission is divided amongst how many servers there were. So I wanted to make sure that the guys knew I was pulling my weight figuratively and, in reality.
And,
So anyway,
and how did that kind of thinking come to you? I mean, that's a character thing. I'm not going to take the easy way out, or I'm not going to use a excuse. How did you become that at mid-20s?
I guess because I never really had anything handed to me. I didn't want anything handed to me. I wanted to earn it.
Interesting.
I wanted to earn it on my own merit and my own value, not, have preferential treatment because I was a female or any other kind of.
But there's a lot of people that would say, well, because you're a female, you can play on that and make life easier. And then there's the others as, when am I going to get my due? Like, I've had hardship all my life, shouldn't have easy street by now. But you didn't take any of those kind of mindsets. Instead, you became
I didn't want any of
raise
that.
the bar into a different standard. And that's interesting.
I didn't want that. In fact, I probably never told you this story, but, in banquets, a couple times I had guys, like hit on me who would kind of hint to, well, I can buy you this, or, money.
Right.
Basically, to me, that was a form of prostitution. It's like,
right.
No, if we hit it off and we have some kind of mutuality and we're sharing this and that, but for you to lead with that, I'm running because I'm not that girl. That wasn't being my authentic self.
Right.
To do that.
So
back to the tip. So the sous chef would have to help me lift up the tray.
Right.
Because it was just to get it up on my shoulder. Then, I'm like this, angled, and could walk it out, set it down, and then, of course, put the plates out accordingly. But I remember one time we had a convention for osteopath, and I told you this story, Jeff, and the osteopath doctor pulls me over. Well, she was on my table, and she says, honey, I just want to tell you, you are torquing your back by, having that on there and then walking out like this, on your back. And I thought, I'm strong. I've always been strong. I'm strong. It's not going to hurt me, but thanks for that.
Yeah.
Got to do what you got to do. And it was really, really, really good money. It was the best money I had ever made in terms of serving.
Yes. And then the accident happened, right?
Yep. Then again, an angel, another God's angel was looking out after me because I actually didn't have an episode to hurt my back. It probably was accumulative, is what I'm thinking.
Okay.
But we had a neighbor's Cadillac cocktail party. So we had the Cadillacs out, in the ballroom as opposed to tables. And then we just had kind of cocktail and hors d'oeuvre stations. So it was very light. There was really nothing heavy, but, just lifting up glasses. And this particular moment, I went to pick up the tray just of glasses, and my brain was just so used to lifting up a heavy tray that I overextended, kind of like hyperextended, thinking it was heavy. Yeah. And I felt like this major pain in my back.
Right.
I could still walk, but I was like, it was so pronounced that something told me, you need to go put in an accident report because this may not be right. Even though you're still walking, it's not like they had to haul me off, but it was excruciating, the pain.
Right. Right.
And so I did. The next day I couldn't walk. I couldn't get out of bed.
Mm.
Couldn't literally walk. They had to carry me to the car to go to the doctors.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So you injured your back. You end up being disabled for a while before
Yep.
you got into your sales career, right?
Couple years.
Yeah. And then the interesting thing is that the evolution of your sales career was incredible to me too, is that you got to work with corporate 500, corporate 100 type of companies without having a 4-year bachelor's degree because of how well you were able to share with them your experience. And they would say, well, you know what, you're on top of what we need. You seem to be bright. You're attractive. Let's put you in the system and onto
Well,
our
I
team.
had my numbers spoke for themselves. So my first sales, like I said, was with a brand new startup.
Yeah.
Okay, that's how I got my feet wet with
Right.
United Publishers. Nobody ever heard of them, and I did phenomenal. So you take those numbers, and now you go to a Dun & Bradstreet, Don Yellow Pages, and go, look, here's what I did for a startup. Because I'll be honest with you, in my career, I saw at United this really nice lady who was very personable, very smart, but she just was not successful. And, if sales were easy, being in the top 5-10%, everybody would be doing it, but it takes it takes tenacity. We used to say, you got to be like a duck and let it roll off your back. I've told you this story. It was burned in my brain, that guy on the phone saying, just remember, honey, 1 out of 10 people will buy anything. And I thought, well, okay. So ready, set, go. I've got my list. I'm making my calls. It's no, no, no. I'm like, okay, that's 3 no's, 7 to go, and we're going to have a yes.
So do you believe you have a certain level of stubbornness in your character and your personality? Because realistically, a lot of people can't handle rejection, so they can't be sales, effective. And then the other people would be discouraged after so many no's. And yet you came across to me, and I've seen you in action, is that you're almost like a shark attacking. Your eyes would roll back and you just go into
shark.
Meaning that you had an agenda, you had a focus, you were determined. In that respect.
So let's talk about that, because shark, we just saw Jaws. Their eyes go black.
That's why I did the shark.
There's no soul there. I have a soul. Okay.
Well, sharks have souls.
But here's the thing. What have I received some of the best training, time management training, handling objections training, sales skills, how to win people's trust, because people need to know you, like you, and trust you. Yeah. And there's a list of things under each one of those. How do they get to know you? How do they get to trust you? How do they get to like you, etc.? So I was very honored and blessed, but I really think, and so I think that anybody can develop the skills needed. If your innate response is, like you said, oh, people don't like rejection. Well, I think, and this is really a Tony Robbins thing, if you've ever heard the walking on, I say walking on water, that's Jesus, but the walking on fire and so forth. It's being laser focused on your agenda. If you call that a shark, okay, but being laser focused on the agenda and knowing that your success is a numbers game. You just need to repeat, rinse and repeat, because the right person is going to align with what you have to offer. And I think it's, Jeff, no different in life. And we talk about that on Miracles Online podcast is, raise your vibration and be your most authentic self. In old days, we were taught tricks to sell. I know you were in some of the companies that you worked for. Sure. But it's not about manipulation. It's about presenting what you have to offer in the best possible way. Yes, there's certain basic techniques. What are the two basic? Hope to gain, fear of loss.
Right.
Unfortunately, most people are motivated through fear of loss, but some are motivated to hope to gain.
Right.
What am I going to gain over this? Well, what would happen if you didn't buy this bold listing for your screw manufacturing company?
Right.
Do you think your competition would get more calls than you?
Right.
Possibly. It's really a psychology. Yeah, there's a certain psychology of techniques that you can use in the sales, but I really believe in today's, again, whether it's a relationship or because we're what are we doing in a relationship? We're selling ourselves. The other person is selling themselves. But what we're really trying to do is to create and deliver and present a vibrational and energetic match, because then it's just a matter of connecting. It's like, great, you have exactly what's going to fill my need. Right. Again, whether it's in a relationship or you're selling a pizza.
Yeah. So
right?
with this type of laser focus technique and basically mindset, where do you think you learned that from? Was there somebody in your life that kind of showed you an example of this, or did you just think this is a cumulative?
No, I never got any examples of that.
Interesting.
Again, back to my very, very strong soul compass.
Yeah.
I can say in terms of that, the laser focus, it was always part of sales trainings, yes, but actually integrating it. I had a really powerful training when I was with AT&T because I was in telecommunications. I was thinking about this. I was probably in food service for about 7 years, maybe less, telecommunications for about 7 years, Yellow Pages for about, design and staging, which I'm currently in, and who knows how long as an author. But no, I forgot my train of thought. What was I
talking about? The laser focused.
The laser focus. Okay, so one of the best classes that I had was a Franklin, coined from Ben Franklin, time planning. With the pyramid.
Right, but you got this at AT&T, right?
I got that at AT&T.
Right, you were already laser focused long before AT&T.
You're saying prior to that?
Oh yeah,
okay.
I mean, to have that kind
I guess
of,
that just made me understand more. What do you put on your calendar? So you know what, I do have a reflection on that, because prior to taking that time management class, is what it was. Everything was urgent.
Sure.
Everything was an A. And do you know what my planner looked like? It's like, here's 25 things on your to-do list and they're all A. Well, that's impossible, and that will drive you crazy because not everything it's got to be done. And I learned that no, if it doesn't get done, and things will change or be bad, if it doesn't get done by tomorrow, then it's an A. But if not, then you need to move it to a B. So in that respect, the Franklin time management helped me to, I don't know why, Jeff, like you asked, like everything was urgent. Possibly it's because I came from, the dynamics, the home dynamics of that everything is urgent. Because if not, bad things would happen. Maybe.
And during this time, you were married to your second husband. Am I correct? Or this is
during when I was working where?
When you got into sales. Or was that the next step, becoming a single parent, when you got into sales?
Gosh, I'm trying to think. Okay, so my first sales job was
the United Publishing.
Right.
Yeah. Were you still married then? Because you first, let me just give the audience an idea. You're very entrepreneurial spirited, even in high school. You would get stuff and sell it to other kids to get lunch money and so forth. So you always had a way to get money. And that's one of the things I've always known about you since I've met you. You just have this magnetism of being able to get money. And it's
Resourceful. I'm going to do
yeah,
whatever it takes. You know,
right.
I really think that having a child at such an early age,
Yeah.
now I'm responsible for a life
Mm,
outside of myself.
right.
That's a big responsibility, and I will do whatever it takes.
Mhm, mhm,
And so I did become very resourceful. If
mhm.
I needed money, I would look around and see what I had and,
Right.
you know, find a way to turn that into cash, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um,
There was never hoarding money with you, was it? Like since I've known you over now 27 years, we've never had a mindset to hoard money. Like, oh, we got to save for the rainy day, and everything is just, well, we can't get that because we need to save for the rainy day. We've never had that mentality, and I've learned that from you actually, because I think I was much
really,
more of a miser, about oh, we'll not do this and try to hoard money into the next day. Although I wasn't very
well,
successful
I
at
give
anything.
you credit for, I told you this the other day that, you know, because I've been in sales so much of my life,
Mhm,
some of
mhm.
it with a base plus some of it commission only,
Right.
uh, you know, it can come and go, you know, especially when I
No
was doing
question.
just real estate. It's like, okay, the mortgage company or the mortgage bill came, but we didn't close on a house. That was
Yeah.
very volatile.
Right.
But you really helped me. And I think that's where we kind of support each other and
Mhm,
propel each other to be
mhm.
better because, you know, you said to me, just don't worry. Don't worry about where it's going to come because you constrict the energy
That's right.
energetically instead of telling God, the universe, I'm ready to receive.
Right.
I'm ready to receive.
Right.
And as soon as I did,
Yeah. And it opens up the door.
opens up the floodgates.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
opens up the
Okay. So
floodgates.
let me just kind of lead the audience with you on this. You got into sales and you were very good at it. And let me just give the audience a really clear picture here. At the house where we live, there is her office, of course, and there are awards on the cupboard and the bookshelves. And we're talking about not 10s, 20s, 30s, on and on. And this is all the stuff that's out, not counting the stuff that never got taken out of the box or anything like that. It always blew my mind just how much you were awarded, as well as how much success you had in your career, despite of changing companies and even changing industries. You've always won awards. So
Mm.
give me an idea on the one story I really absolutely love is the sales award that you got. Was it Sprint, right?
Uh,
It
no, it was Donnelly.
was Donnelly Yellow Pages. Tell that story to the audience.
I think I just recently threw that away. Okay, so back in the
Oh
day
man.
when you got it was an award like this big, you know, with the big wood and the gold, and you know, not real gold, but with your name and what
Yeah.
you know what you won, so much to production, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So I got the top award in Donnelly Yellow Pages for production. So, you know, we were charged with two things. We would given a book, a directory book, because they were very established, and you were to renew and increase.
Mhm.
Okay, so you were rewarded on the highest increase because some of them are going to go, no, I don't want that half page anymore. So you lost that. You got to make it up somewhere else,
Right.
or someone's got a quarter page and you sell them now a full page or a half page.
Mhm.
So the bottom line was credited on net gain. So
Mhm.
I had the highest net gain in the office and got this really big award. I was very honored. It was, I think, the first award in my professional, you know, sales career that I had ever received.
Mhm.
It's not that I wasn't grateful, and it's not that I was one of those, you know, bra burning women lib types, but I just felt when I saw the little figure on top, it was a male figure holding, you know, a book, yellow page book underneath them. But it was a male figure.
Mhm.
And that just didn't sit right with me.
Sure.
And so I just, I very kindly let my manager know that, is there any way we could get it swapped out to illustrate my gender?
Right.
Which, we used to, back in the day, try to wear pants when I was in high school because all you could wear was dresses.
Mhm.
But back then, that's all you had to define male and female was, the female had a dress on and the
Sure.
male had pants on, right?
Mhm.
So they did, and I cherish that award, even though it was in the garage for many decades.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the thing about that story that I've always loved is that you were so empowered by the divine feminine. And I feel that with you. There's a majestic regalness to your energy. And I've said that to you many times.
Yes.
And this level of self-assurance of the divine feminine is extremely important. And I think it attributes to your success, because let me just go down the idea of the list of things. Not only you were a sales winner, that you moved up to a prestige company like AT&T, and this is wholesale carriers, not selling cell phones in a store. This is dealing with reselling of the technology levels, right? The wireless.
I sold to other telecom companies. Yeah.
Right. So this is negotiation, big contracts, and so forth. And from that, you moved on into even a bigger division until that ran out. But that to me was huge because, again, like I said, you got into these positions without a 4 years bachelor's degree. You got into this.
And that's a really good point. Because, I started with Sprint, Jeff, and then I went to MCI, and I dreamed of being at AT&T, but I heard, that's why I never believed the rumors. Oh no, you need a 4-year degree for that, honey. You can't work at AT&T. And I thought, well, let's just see. So proven track record. Sure, I had to start with the lower company and prove my worth to be able. But good companies will definitely hire people that have a proven track record. Of course, yeah.
And from that, you decided after a while, let's not work for the man anymore, and we got married, and you start to develop the entrepreneurial spirit again, and you became a realtor in California.
Yep.
Then when we moved to Texas, you decided that, no, I don't want to do that, but I got all this experience in homes, so let me explore working for a home builder. And you got into that.
And let me tell you, part of that impetus was, back then you did, I think they call it farming, walking outside. I'm like, I am not farming in the heat of Texas. I want to work in a nice, comfy, air-conditioned model home, dressed nicely, and help people select their dream home for their next home journey. And so I did that for almost 10 years. And again, was top.
And because I was now married to you, I got to reap the benefits.
To witness firsthand.
Yeah.
Right?
I got to go to Hawaii because she was a top producer. I got to go on a cruise because she's a top producer, and this is just amazing that I followed her footsteps because I saw the greatness that she was exhibit. So I parlayed myself into professional sales in a total different manner. Prior to that, my professional sales was sitting in a music store going, you like this guitar? So I really got involved because of her, because of you, Kat, because of you and the way that I see your success. I was able to model myself after you. And that developed us into where we are today. But the key thing is there was a fork in the road all of a sudden where you went, I can't. Then this is after we had our grandkids coming out. I think that was a definitive decision, right? You said we can't burn our life, rest of my life working for somebody else when I have a family that I wanted to spend time with. So how do I develop this entrepreneurial mindset and build the income channels to my lifestyle? And hence the creation of Living the Dream LLC and ultimately the birth of TADA by Kat. So tell us a little bit.
I forgot that is what propelled it, was the realization, because if you've ever worked new home sales, you're working every weekend. Now they started laxing that to where you got one weekend off a month. But the reality is if you took the weekend off, that's when you lost that sale that walked in that was ready to buy. So they started forcing people to take the weekend off. But it's all encompassing. I mean, I have a dear friend right now. She works for the largest builder, and she gets home at 8 o'clock at night, still doing paperwork, works, 5-6 days a week, and it's grueling. She doesn't have grandkids yet. Wait till she has grandkids. But that's what propelled me. You're so right, Jeff.
Right,
And
right.
I want to again reference time management, because time management isn't just, well, doing the A's and B's. When you Google, the time management pyramid, at the base of the pyramid, at the very bottom of the pyramid, is your values. And that was so eye-opening to me, Jeff, and I still reference it today, because if what you're putting on your calendar doesn't include what's important and valuable to you, this is where people become anxious, stressful, they drink, do drugs, whatever, and they don't know why. And we run across this in heart space hypnosis, where people are not congruent to what is really close to their heart, because they're not putting daily steps that align with their values.
Right.
And I feel so truly blessed that we've been able to carve out a life that, Tony Robbins, back to Tony Robbins, one of our longtime gurus, he was asked, what is success? And I love his response. He says, success to me is doing what you want, where you want, with whom you want.
It's right.
Is that not so true?
Agreed, 100%.
Wow. Start your own business. Carve your own life out. Working for the man.
Yeah. So once we started
watch anymore.
Right. When we started that, I was part of it. I drove the U-Haul truck before we owned our own stuff and lift furnitures and all that. And then the thing is, we all know the first couple of years of any new business is extremely volatile. The first 5-year business is going to dictate if you're going to stay or not.
Whether you stay, yes.
And a lot of people, fall apart in second year. But by 5th year, I believe we became an award-winning company. And that's all due to you and your development as the president, CEO of TADA Staging. So give us a little glimpse of how exciting was it when you reached that level of the pinnacle of building your own company and making it into a success.
Thank you for that, Jeff. And, you were an integral part and have always, been the wind beneath my wings, helping create my logo,
I made
my
sandwiches
marketing,
for everybody.
the technical support, Cat's Home Chat, all of that would not be without you. So yes, you pushed me forward and said, I can't schlep furniture anymore. And that pushed me to build and so forth. And, we're in a different time right now, going on 12, 13 plus years. I love helping people maximize their equity with staging. We're doing a lot of design now. I love helping people personalize and bring their interior spaces into the blessed sanctuary that lights them up and feels like a warm hug to them when they walk in. Plus, I get to spend their money, not my money.
Right.
Jeff told me years ago that I had said to him, I need a job where I spend other people's money and get to go shopping. Like,
that's
well,
right.
Here we are. And now we're developing into another avenue, which we don't have time to talk about today. But I will tell you, Jeff, that I keep trying to do the right thing, show up fully every day,
right?
Treat my clients and my associates with respect and honor,
right?
And integrity. And God never ceases to blow my mind, whether it's out of the blue project that pays for our trip to Greece, or a stint on HGTV that just propelled my credibility to new levels. And these are things that I could not dial in or say, I'm going to order this up. I think it's, again, about raising your vibration, letting God and the universe know how you want to feel, what you want it to look like, visualize it in every sense, touch it, feel it, taste it. What would it look like? How are you going to serve others? And guess what? The world provides these synchronicities, these serendipities that are beyond what you could have penciled down, for what you want.
Right.
I truly believe that.
Right. And me too. Well, at this point, we're a little bit over an hour. So what I want to do is just to basically close this up because we can do this all day, right? In the future, we'll do a little bit different in deeper dives on these art of masteries. If you're kindly enough to come back and share with your wisdom, but I just want
Absolutely.
to let everybody know that this last few years you've developed into the author. You finished a book that you started 27 years ago, literally, and that has blossomed now onto a Miracles Online podcast to help in regards to share the experiences, knowledge, wisdom on relationships, marriage, commitment, and dating. I couldn't be more prouder to be part of that with you. So
Mm.
with those things happening, what are your coming up projects? Do you have any books or what's all going on in your future here?
Well, again, I try not to make it too finite because
Mhm.
I know I need to leave it open for infinite possibilities because God has so much more possibilities than I could ever in my little life and my little brain come up with.
Mhm.
But I have been propelled to start. It's in the works, and the
Uh-huh.
book is When the Mind Changes Its Mind.
Mhm.
uh, and
Wow.
and I think it's magic happens is or it aligns. We haven't uh, finalized the sub, but when the
Mhm.
mind
Mhm.
changes its mind, and it's a perfect adjunct, and it ties into something that I've actually practiced for decades in my own life with
Yes.
some of what you heard in my story and stories in my particular challenges, and
Mhm.
that is my new company called Heart Space Hypnosis.
Looking
And
forward to that.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that's already we're doing it in tandem with the staging and design,
Mhm.
and it's just where I want it to be because I want to fully help the people that I help. I
Mhm.
don't want to be, time constraint or energy constraint because it's
Mhm.
really an honor to help people to remove the old stories and transform to live a better life, their best life, because
Mhm.
we all have this one great, big, beautiful life that we know of, and everyone deserves to live it with joy and with
Mhm.
creativity and with grace. And I'm honored to be able to play in that field with heart space hypnosis.
It's fantastic. And I'm so glad you were able to share that with the world. And I'm so glad you were able to come here and do the 13th No Art of Mastery because for all those people who's tuned into this podcast are not familiar, this all spawned from the 13th Note movie that you and I produced about 4 years
Yes.
ago now. And this is about the art of mastery. And we refined it now to this podcast to be able to interview people from all walks of life and so forth. So I want to thank you so much for coming in and
Again,
for
my
sharing.
my honor, Jeff. I was surprised that you asked me because,
Well,
well,
the title of this episode, I think, really speaks for itself because you represent the mastery of the Renaissance woman in our modern day world.
mm,
The skills and the achievements that you have come across and have exhibited and have rose to is just it's something that other people needs to see and understand. If they can model it, that'd be great. If they can be inspired by it, that'd be awesome. But the
yes,
fact that I got to live with you and see a lot of it, it has encouraged me, it has influenced me, and it definitely the results of the greatness that I become is because of you as
oh,
well, and it's
thank you,
because of
sweetie.
us. So I know that story needs to be told, and I'm glad we have Miracles Online. But again, those are very relationship and in that intimate type of setting for that podcast. This is really about mastering and how to refine ourselves,
It's
right?
mastering self. It
Yeah.
really is. I think in all whatever guests that you have, and that is a continuing story, isn't
Yeah.
it? It
Yeah.
really
Oh,
is.
no question. So, to part ways with our audience, thank you so much for liking and subscribe us. Thumbs up, of course, all those things. What do you leave our audience with on the art of mastery? What one thing that you can leave for them
Mm,
to
mm.
take on as a nugget of truth or knowledge for them to take away?
Well, it might be two part, but
Okay.
I would like to say, whatever you do it with passion. And especially if it's a vocation, do what lights you up. Don't do what pays the lights. Do,
Yes.
do what lights you up.
Yeah.
If you do, you're going to show up as your most authentic self for
Yes.
yourself, for others,
Yeah.
and for the world.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you so much, Kat, my lovely little bear. Right. And thank you
Thank
all
you.
out there tuning in. Of course, this was streamed live across Facebook and YouTube. This will be on Red Pill Project channel over at redpill.tv, redpills, sorry, plural, .tv. If you go there,
Redpills.tv.
yeah, the Art of Mastery 13th No podcast airs on Sunday. So make sure you tune in. And of course, tell your friends because, you know, we are here to influence the world, to make the world better, to make ourselves better, to make each other better. So until the next one, thank you so much. We'll see you again on Art of Mastery.